it's Susie from Hey Grill Hey, and today we are talking all things offset smokers. Let's do it. Now, my first smoker that really got me into the backyard barbecue cooking world was a pellet grill, and we just did a pellet grill 101 video. This is the next up in our backyard barbecue 101 series about different types of grills, and I think the offset smoker is a great next step for your backyard cooking adventure. We're gonna cover in this video kind of the construction of these types of grills, the style of cooking, the flavors you can get, and when you're done watching this video, you're gonna have all of the tools and information and confidence you need that if you wanna start cooking on an offset smoker, you'll be ready to go. First up, let's talk about the construction of an offset smoker and what it really is. An offset smoker is called an offset smoker because the fire is offset from the cooking chamber. In almost all offset styles of cookers, you have kind of three main components. You've got the firebox where you build and maintain your fire. It's separated usually either by just an empty hole or a damper system into the smoke chamber. This is where your meat actually goes. So your cooking is offset from the fire. That's why it's called an offset smoker. And all of them will also have a smoke stack so that it can create a draw from the fire across the food out the smokestack. In addition to the basic construction, the venting system is also really important because managing your airflow is how you manage the temperature and the flavor of what happens in the smoke chamber. So your firebox will have venting or doors where you can control the airflow. The smoke chamber will also have a damper so you can control the airflow that way as well. This is the most common style that you'll see for backyard cooking. There is a secondary style of these offset smokers called reverse flow smokers, where this smokestack is positioned on this side of the smoker, which seems counterintuitive because wouldn't the smoke just go right out? But no, because inside the smoke chamber itself, there's actually a damper that pushes the smoke and the heat under the food up across the top, and then the draw from the smokestack pulls the smoke across the top of the food. That's usually only common in higher end offset smokers, something that you would see if you're really into competitive barbecue cooking or if you have your own catering business. Okay, you probably noticed I have two different offset smokers behind me. The next thing that I want to talk about is kind of build quality and what you should look for in an offset smoker, because that's one of the most common questions that I get is, what smoker should I buy, or what features actually matter? So we're gonna cover each of these separately and kind of compare them a little bit so you can get an idea of what might be most important to you. Let's kick things off with this char griller. This is a standard big box style of offset cooker that you could probably go down to your local Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, and pick up something very similar to this today. Price ranges vary, but you can likely get started with a unit like this, $500 to $750. Couple key features. Construction is the same as a regular offset smoker. You can see on the firebox, it's a little bit smaller. Having a smaller firebox means that there's less air in the firebox. The firebox itself isn't insulated, so heat management is gonna be a little bit more hands-on, I would say. The chamber itself is actually really comparable in size to kind of this more expensive model, so you can cook a lot of stuff on a grill just like this. We've got a shorter smokestack, but we do have a damper on the top so we can control temperature here. And the steel is a little bit thinner, so you might have a harder time maintaining temperature in the chamber itself. When it comes to affordability and kind of getting off the ground for your first offset smoker, I actually think this is an amazing place to start. I cooked on a smoker just like this on Barbecue Brawl, and I won multiple challenges cooking on an offset smoker just like this. And this was one of my first offset style cookers that really got me into not just the hobby, but kind of like the passion behind that low and slow, wood-fired, babysitting the fire style of cooking. Totally possible to turn out amazing food on an affordable starter grill like this. Now let's talk about like version 2. Say you've done this, you're ready for an upgrade, or you just really like jumping into a hobby with both feet. This is something that I would look at. This is an Old Country Gen 2. This is a great model that I feel like is great for the backyard cooker. We do have a full review on this pit, so you should check it out. This grill has a couple of features that I want to point out that can be valuable if you spend a lot of time doing this style of cooking. We've got a much bigger firebox. One nice part about this is it allows you the ability to position your fire Within the firebox, if you put it closer to the door, you can control how the heat runs into the smoke chamber itself. This firebox is large and insulated, so it holds the fire a little bit longer. I feel like I'm refueling this one less often, and it's quite a bit easier to control the airflow with the venting system that it has on the side of the firebox. The build quality in terms of the thickness of the steel, this steel is significantly thicker, so the chamber holds heat better. When it comes to weather or temperature swings outside, the inside of your chamber tends to hold its temperature better for longer. Having a taller smokestack does the same thing. It really helps regulate temperature control. That's one of the biggest complaints of people with offset cooking is it's hard to manage temperature. There are a lot of temperature swings. Having some of these modifications on a higher end grill really helps, solve some of those problems. Price point on kind of these upgraded offset cookers for your backyard run anywhere typically between $1,500. I've seen some go all the way up to $4,000. This one clocks in just around $2,000, but there is a model that comes in about $1,400 to $1,500. So definitely a significant price change. I guess you just have to decide how much time you want to spend managing your fire, because that's really the biggest difference. Now that we know how these are built and how they work, let's actually build a fire. You need a couple of things. Something to start your fire with. I prefer using these little lighter wax cubes. There's tumbleweeds. You can even use a charcoal chimney. I make a base of charcoal as kind of the main source of heat, and then I supplement my charcoal with wood. In a smaller firebox like this, I tend to lean toward large chunks of hardwood that are specifically for smoking. In a larger firebox like this one, you can fit larger pieces of wood or wood splits. So I'm gonna be building the fire in the offset today. Now the amount of fuel and the amount of wood really depends on the size of the smoker you're cooking on. So I feel like a chimney full of charcoal creates a great base. This will put in one split, let it really catch and start to burn down, and then we'll add additional splits as we get the temperature up within the smoker itself, and we'll add splits continually during the cooking process. As they start to burn down, the smoke tapers off. Usually in smokers about this size, I'm checking every 30 to 45 minutes to see where my temperature's at, to see where my smoke's at, and to add in additional wood splits as needed. On a smaller smoker, it's definitely closer to that 30-minute mark that I want to be checking to ensure that I need to add more wood, if I need to add a little bit more charcoal to bring the heat up. Fire management is a process, and it will feel a little bit like you're babysitting, but if you've got a great drink and a comfy chair and you know that good food's on the way, that's kind of part of the romance of the experience and the hobby and the art of cooking on this style of cooker is you get to sit back and take the time and babysit a fire, and it can be really fun. We typically reserve this style of cooking for the weekends. While we're waiting for charcoal to really catch and start to ash over, I want to talk about a couple of the most common mistakes that people make with offset cooking. First up is not giving themselves enough time. This has two parts. Part one is you don't give yourself enough time to really get a fire established, really get the temperature inside your smoke chamber stable. You'll get it up to 225 or 250 or 275 and get really excited to throw your meat on. You open up the smoke chamber, introduce an additional waft of air to your fire and drop the temperature down to 180, and then it takes 45 minutes to get it back up to your cooking temperature, killing that initial phase of that low and slow smoking process. So give yourself plenty of time. I like to plan at least 45 minutes to an hour of building a fire, getting the smoker preheated before the meat even touches the grill or you even crack the lid of the smoke chamber. The second part of time management is not giving yourself enough time for your food to actually cook. If you're doing something big, right? brisket, pork shoulder, you want it to be really juicy and really tender, you have to give yourself a massive window for cooking, especially if you're early to the offset cooking game. It won't be as consistent as something like a pellet smoker. Sometimes you'll have dips in temperature and then rises in temperature. That can extend your overall cook time process. So build yourself in a buffer of a couple additional hours. It's way better to finish early and rest longer than try and rush it at the end, especially if you have family hanging around that is starving and ready to eat. The second mistake that people make most frequently when they get into this style of cooking is airflow management, being an over adjuster. That's what we'll call it. So regulating the temperature of your chamber happens with the venting system, both on the firebox and on the smokestack. And if you're new to this style of cooking, it's scary. It's scary to see the temperature go higher than you want or be lower than you want. So the default setting is to over adjust. It's slamming all of the air all the way open if you want it to heat up faster, or closing everything down really fast if you're scared of it being too hot. Make small adjustments and only one thing at a time. Get your smoker set at half and then do a majority of your adjustments on the firebox itself. Don't be swinging everything open and closed in rapid succession. Todd, in an effort to bring the temperature where you want it. Just make small adjustments. It will take a little bit of time to regulate, but it will be far more consistent than if you're a little bit dramatic with your airflow adjustment. Okay, I know this is Offset Smokers 101, but I'm gonna give you a little baby bit of 201 content. This is called a shop vac. You set it on reverse, you turn it on, it blows air out, and you can actually speed up the ignition process of your coals and your wood. Also, leaf blower. Anything that can feed air into your fire faster to really help establish the fire, build those coals. It's a sweet little hack. Fire! Coals are ashed over. I've got a really nice ignition on the piece of wood that I've got in there. Close this up, vents open, let this main smoke chamber start to preheat, and then we'll start to close down the vents a little bit as we creep up to 275 degrees, which is my target temperature for offset cooking. If we're gonna build a fire, we might as well cook something. I got a beautiful rack of St. Louis spare ribs, hit them with some Zesty Gold, little bit of rib rub, and because a lot of the work with offset style of cooking happens in the fire management, I'm not gonna do anything complicated with the ribs. I'm not gonna spritz or mop or wrap or anything. We're just gonna let them cook 275 degrees, probably take 4 to 4.5 hours until they're at the tenderness that I like. But during the cooking process, like I said, managing temperature is gonna be where you spend a majority of your time. So hang out, stay close by. Every 30 to 45 minutes, take a look inside your firebox. If the fire has really gone out on your split, it's cooked down, it's almost gone, that means it's time to add another log. You'll also notice the temperature will start to dip on the smoker itself. You won't be seeing any thin blue smoke coming out of the smokestack. Those are all good indicators that it's time for a new split. And I say 30 to 45 minutes because it just means you're not gonna walk away. But depending on how thick your steel is in your smoker, how big your chamber is, how big your splits are, that time is really just a guideline. Looking for those key indicators is really what's gonna tell you that it's time to add a new log. Another piece of terminology that I did not really learn about until I got into fire management was thin blue smoke. It is a term synonymous with backyard style cooking, and it has to do with having a clean burn on your fire. You will have moments when you put a new log in or whatever that you'll have kind of thicker, billowy smoke. That's totally fine, but a majority of your cook, you'll barely be able to see the smoke coming out of the smokestack. It'll be thin, it'll be wispy, it'll be light, and it will be lovely. All right, let those sweat for a minute. Our smoker is at about 200 degrees, and because we really want it to preheat all of the way, we're gonna let it hang out and not mess with it until it's been hanging out at the temperature that I like and it's ready for a new split. Okay, just threw another split on. Smoke chamber is preheated. It's time for me to close down my vents. I'm gonna go about half on the top. That's usually my standard when I'm doing low and slow cooking, and then I'll close down the vents probably to about a quarter open to start then I can slowly regulate. The third mistake people make when they begin their offset cooking journey is believing that the temperature has to be precise. If we're shooting for 275, it can only be 275. And if it drops to 274, it's time to open the vents or time to add another split. What I like to shoot for is a range. If my goal is 275 and I'm hovering between 250 and 300, that is totally fine. Don't stress too much about overthinking it. Your thermometer's not always gonna be 100% accurate. That's why it's kind of a hobby. It's a relaxing weekend thing. It should be fun. If you are overstressed about managing temperature and trying to completely control every little aspect, you're losing out on some of the romance of it. So give yourself a window, give yourself grace, and don't be too quick to throw adjustments when your temperature starts to go up or down. It's so heavy. All right, ribs are on, temperature is holding great. It's time for me to get a drink and grab a seat and hang out for the next few hours and smell the beautiful smell of wood smoke on a beautiful day. If you have any questions or tips for beginners, if you're a pro about this offset style of cooking, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Tune in as we continue to do our Barbecue 101 series here on YouTube. See ya.